Amazingly, the last but one James Bond film is now 10 years old. Spectre came at a time when Bond mania was back to its highest heights after the euphoria surrounding the London Olympics and the most successful 007 film ever at the box office, Skyfall. Much like Thunderball, we had a Bond actor returning for his fourth film, with audiences ready for an instant follow-up. The 3-year wait would now seem like the blink of an eye, but it took a bit of persuading to get Daniel Craig and director Sam Mendes to return. The pieces of the Craigverse were now firmly in place. The Scooby Gang of Ralph Fiennes' M, Ben Whishaw's Q, Naomi Harris's Moneypenny, and yes, Rory Kinnear's Tanner were all assembled for a classic adventure. Even Judi Dench returned from the dead to deliver a personal message for Bond. We began with one of the most memorable pre-title sequences ever. Mendes deploying a one-shot through Mexico City's Day of the Dead festival ended with a spectacular helicopter fight above the public square. The travelogue element of the franchise was also back, with the mission extending to Rome, the Austrian Alps, Morocco, and ending in London. The producers were even more excited at winning back the rights to Ian Fleming's properties of the organisation Spectre, and of course its leader, Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Double Academy Award-winning actor Christoph Waltz signed on as villain Franz Oberhauser, refusing to confirm if he was the head of the title nemesis. Another character, Max Denby, played by Andrew Scott, was added to the mix. Coming hot on the heels of playing Sherlock Holmes' enemy Moriarty, we all assumed he would turn out to be a villain too. We even had a proper henchman in the form of WWE star Batista. After minimal lasting love interest in Skyfall, things on that front returned to the Roger Golden era of multiple Bond girls. Monica Bellucci as an age-appropriate Spectre widow. That raised a few eyebrows, but no one could have expected Mr. White's daughter Madeline to turn out to be Bond's ultimate love. Whatever the misgivings over that storyline and the notorious soap opera elements with Brofeld, we gathered to celebrate what was another huge financial success. Spectre gave us all the traditional Bond tropes and much more on top, and it was great to have so many of you contribute with your thoughts. Welcome everybody to the Really 007 podcast. I'm Tom Pickup, and alongside me tonight from the podcast is John Kell. Good evening, John.
Good evening, guys. You okay?
Very well, yes. And as you can see here, we have two special guests with us tonight, and they've been enlisted by myself because the Spectre is a polarising James Bond film, but it is 10 years old, and we want to celebrate that fact. It's, the penultimate James Bond film that we've seen at the cinema, so it's in relatively recent memory, and everyone therefore can remember what they were doing when they saw it, and the build-up, the hype, and all the sort of reaction to it. But 10 years on, we'll have to discuss what's happened, whether our feeling for it has gone up or down. But we will be as positive as we can, whilst being realistic about this film. But yes, the two guests I have with me, both top lads from up and down at each end of the country, in fact. We've got Graham, who is James Bond Confidential on Instagram, and he's from all the way down in Kent. Good evening, Graham.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for the invite.
Well, no, you're gonna have to you learn your wage tonight, Graham. I think defending this film. Yeah, no, I'm joking. Graham's got a brilliant Instagram channel and very interactive in terms of like location visits. Really good. And you went to Prague and Karlovy Vary, didn't you? Quite recently, Graham.
Yeah, that was November of last year. Was very fortunate to go to GoldenEye this year in April.
Oh.
Wow.
Like you do.
Nice. Very jealous.
Yeah.
And obviously we saw you in Shanti for the View to a Kill one as well.
Yes. Matera last year.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I've kind of said to my wife, I want to go and do all these holidays, and providing I fit in some sunbed time for her in whichever location, she's more than happy with me wandering off and taking photographs of a doorway, and being very excited about this particular doorway, and her looking at me thinking, what the hell are you doing? It makes other people happy as well. So,
oh dear. We are very odd, aren't we, as Bond fans? But
Mm,
we'll go
definitely.
into some of the locations, of course, when we chat about the film, because I'm sure, well, most of us will have been to some of them. But yeah, thanks for joining us, Graham.
Thank you.
We've also got, this is the face of Bond Up North. This is Sam.
Hello.
So great to see you, Sam, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you online. And then certainly Harry and myself, it was fantastic to meet you at another Northern gathering from Carl Brain, the Bond in Yorkshire gathering last November in Leeds. So
We
yeah,
did, yeah, yeah. We met up for a couple of drinks, didn't we, last year? So
yeah,
yeah, and thank you for having me on tonight.
yeah. Well, no, again, a defender, hopefully a promoter of Spectre.
Definitely.
But just ask you guys, how did you get into sort of James Bond, and how did you sort of feed that into your Instagram channels? So you go first, Sam. Go on.
So into Bond in general, I've got the standard family ties story. So I always remember when ITV used to have the marathons on all the time. We watched. It was my dad. My dad was watching You Only Live Twice one
Oh,
evening. Walked into the living room, sat down. What's going on? And he sat me down, pointed at the TV, and said, "That he is the guy right there." And then we watched the whole film, absolutely hooked on it. I want to say maybe 6 years old. I mean, he has no memory of this. When I say to him, it was your fault, you got me into James Bond. He doesn't remember it, but I do. And yeah, I'm a child of the 90s who grew up with Brosnan. Those were my films, and I would probably say they still are. Um, and in terms of Instagram, it all happened in COVID. There's many accounts that I followed on Instagram, loads of the content on YouTube. And I thought, do you know what? I'll throw my hat in the ring and get involved. Posted just a couple of pictures of my, modest collection, and it went from there. And I've got friends all over the world now. I've met you guys, for a few drinks last year, and maybe again this year at the
yeah,
next meetup. And it just goes from there. And I feel like I consume more content on YouTube and podcasts than I do actually watching the films now.
yeah. Especially
That's what
when
I find myself doing more.
yeah,
Yeah,
when there's no film and we're waiting, it's quite a nice thing to do, isn't it? Because I'm worried when the film is we know it's imminent, we'll just be focused on that, and we'll just have to sort of ease off watching the other ones for a
yeah.
little bit at least.
And
But yeah,
and it's funny, Graham, you just mentioned about your trips away and taking random pictures of things that other people won't understand. And that's kind of what it's about. And I remember early on in starting my Instagram account, and I was messaging and posting things, and my wife turned around and went, you found your people, haven't you? And I was like,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes, I found my people. And that sums it up. So yeah, I'm with you on the taking the random pictures that only us lot online will understand.
It's true. I mean, we didn't know there was this community. We were in our 30s by the time we even knew this thing existed. Going online and meeting Bond fans. You know that it's massively popular, but I didn't even know there were sort of YouTube channels and people talking about it. It's just crazy. And those people are real and they're actually decent. And one of them, Graham, your channel's massive, but when you've obviously got a longer history with James Bond, and you've got a very, yeah, like I say, prominent channel. But when did the channel start? That was more latterly, I guess.
Yeah, just over 3 years ago.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Oh,
Um,
doing really
I
well.
I came to all of this so much later. Bond, like so many of us, and like what Sam said, from a kid, um, being somewhat older, I can remember the Christmas premieres on ITV. There were films, obviously I'd never seen at the cinema, being too young. They were on there, so that was then the focus. Every Christmas, you got a Bond film coming on. So I caught up with the Sean Connerys, etc. But the Instagram channel really come about because I was fortunate enough to take early retirement. And I thought, well, I want something to do. And I'd just gone on to Instagram and I'd seen a few channels. And I thought, oh, I think I could have a play with that.
Yeah,
And it just grew from there. And then the holidays got added into it as well. And then, the fan clubs then come in. 007 GB started. I then joined Shaken Not Stirred as well, and suddenly there are these events to go to. Where before I've been very insular, and it was just like, oh, I'm the only Bond fan, because I think I'm probably the only one in my family apart from my dad, who's now passed. So to suddenly be able to have these really inane conversations with other people that we find so illuminating, that other people just think you're speaking another language, has been really good. But so yeah, my Instagram channel has slowly been growing and growing and growing. Hopefully it can carry on that way. But it's been good. And that the last couple of years has really been event driven for me. As many events that I can go to as possible, as much as the pension allows, as it were.
Yeah. Well, come on, John.
Very modest of you, Graham, to say it's slowly grown. I mean, it's like saying Jude Bellingham has slowly grown into.
I think for the purposes of this, you need to tell us how many Instagram followers you actually have, just so we can prove that it hasn't been a modest.
42,800.
Yeah.
42.
That's incredible.
It's more than Bury FC, I'll tell you that, Graham. Sam, even your picture for Bonnet North is so iconic, and I didn't know what you looked like for a while, because it's like a cartoon version of you. So I love it. I love all these things.
Yeah, my wife drew that. My wife drew
Oh,
that.
did she? All right.
I threw some ideas together for what I thought could be a logo for the account, and she all the ideas aside and said, nope, I've got an idea for this. And the initial one was Pierce Brosnan Die Another Day with the martini, but it was Michael O'Hare wearing a flat cap to represent Yorkshire.
And
it stuck.
I've got it now, right? That's where it's from, yeah.
Yeah. It's that image.
How good's that? Best of both worlds. A blonde Bond, though. Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, absolutely not.
We'll come on to that. But yeah, fantastic for you guys to join us. So, as I say, Spectre is 10 years old, nearly, at the time of recording. And this was quite an unusual period in the Bond history, because we had Skyfall, which had sort of brought everything back to prominence, riding the crest of the wave. Sam Mendes continues. Everything seems to be going well. And then there were a few troubles, weren't there, in terms of production, with Daniel got injured.
Yeah.
And I know he always mentions that, as he thinks it hampered things a bit. Personally, I don't think you can tell. I don't, he's still very committed. And we'll go through some of the scenes in the film, but certainly the pre-title sequence. I think he was wearing a knee brace, wasn't he, for the entire thing, which you can't tell again. Harry will tell us you can tell that Mr. White is wearing a knee thing when he gets shot in it at the end of Casino Royale. But that's another story. Anyway, right. Got to get these things in, John,
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah.
Yeah. Positive. So, yeah, in terms of where we were then, when it first came out, can you remember the feeling, like how excited we were, particularly coming after Skyfall, seeing these shots of Mexico City and all these stunts and Bond in the snow in Austria? It was a good time to be a Bond fan, wasn't it? I think it was. It was back to that exciting feeling again.
I was unfortunately still at work, so I was probably somewhere in a dark place working out things. I was pleased that there was a shorter gap between Skyfall to Spectre than we'd had from Quantum to Skyfall, because my one thing that if I could ever speak to people at Amazon and say, could we go back to the 2-year cycle of getting a Bond film out every couple of years? So I was pleased that Spectre come out a year earlier than I thought it was going to be. And Daniel Craig, I've loved Bond, since I was a kid, but I was just starting to come close to tapering off. Love Pierce, love what he brought, but I just got to that point where I could sit down and write the next Bond film quite easily.
Yeah.
I knew how it was going to happen. I knew when the girl was going to get killed, when she was going to get kissed, or whatever. You could work the whole thing out. It was just too formulaic. And then Blonde Bond come along, and I saw all the bad things that were being written. And I was like, I'm going to give the guy a chance. And then Casino Royale blew me away, and suddenly I was re-energized into Bond. So by the time Spectre was on its way to come around, I was like chomping at the bit for the next Craig installment. So it ticked a lot of boxes for me. There was the one bad tick that we've slightly touched on, but the rest of it, I just love the film.
Oh, this is so good, isn't it? I am remembering now. I can't remember the excitements because even for us sort of Craig skeptics, Skyfall was obviously a high point, and particularly the way it ends is like the most Bond thing you've ever seen. John, can you remember? Like I said, I'm sure there was stuff on TV about filming in Mexico City, and that was getting people excited.
Yeah, the one thing that really excited me was the trailer.
Yeah,
I vividly remember the trailer. It had real Dark Knight slash On Her Majesty's Secret Service vibes. So it was very dark, very moody, quite emotional. There was bit it told you nothing but got you very excited, which is what a trailer should do. And sorry, just clearing my screen. And then it finished with the bullet hole through the Spectre
oh
side
yeah,
like that, and I was like, "Ah, right, this is where we're going, is it?" I remember thinking this was one of the best casts I've seen in a Bond film in terms of like stature of people. I was a massive Sherlock fan, so I love Andrew Scott. Wrestling obsessive, so Dave Batista. So I was in right from the start. I personally don't remember much about any of the behind the scenes filming in Mexico and stuff, but I knew that I was super, super hyped for this film. I absolutely adored Skyfall. And I remember like in being in Budapest maybe 2 weeks before its release, and Budapest was just covered with Spectre billboards everywhere. And I think it really hit home to me just how massive Bond is internationally at that point.
that's right, isn't it? Because obviously for No Time to Die, we were all stuck at home, so we didn't sort of see the worldwide
Yeah.
lead up to it. But yeah, it did. It was like I say, it was a great time to be a Bond fan, and we were excited. We knew that we knew that Blofeld was coming back as well, so that was another thing.
Hmm.
Christoph Waltz will go on to it. You know, John, you've just mentioned the stature of the actors. Well, goodness me, I know you're a massive Tarantino fan, and you're adding one of the all-time greatest performances in his films there. But we'll come on to that, John. But yeah, in terms of the first time you watched it, John, and can you remember your initial reaction to it?
Absolutely loved it.
There you go.
Absolutely loved it. It's to the point that I went back the next day.
There you go.
It's one of them films that I will say right out, I never not enjoy. I
Yeah,
always enjoy every time I watch it. I I, I can understand some people's reasoning of they find it slow or whatever. Never been my issue that whatsoever. Never been my issue. I remember on the second day I got back and I sat down and just sitting back thinking it through. I think that's where the gap started appearing. But it didn't. I never went there saying I don't enjoy this film.
that's great.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. And I think I do remember at the time, non-Bond friends of mine, like people like Simon Lewis, saw
Hmm.
it at the cinema, and he was like, "Come on, Tom, you must have liked that. That was like the most Bond film ever. It had everything." And I do think there is a return, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, the plot might get what we didn't want towards the end of the film, but certainly the first two-thirds, you really are. It's classic Bond territory in terms of yes, Graham. I know it might have been more like a traditional Bond film where you knew what was going to happen. It was A to B to C, but Daniel Craig's first three films had got you to that point where yes, we should have that. You know, we can't keep building and building. We want to see Bond doing what he's good at, and yeah, we'll talk about that more. Sam, can you remember? Were you at school still? I mean, how are you?
No, no, it's definitely not. I was at school for Casino Royale because I remember
Yeah.
it being a school trip that we all went to see Casino Royale.
That sounds
which
incredible.
was ace.
God,
Which
wish I
was
went to that
ace.
school.
So yeah, but with
It's
Spectre,
a
I feel
pizza
like
build for our school trips.
yeah, I know. Yeah, that's all I remember of it is the fact that we were there in the
I
cinema
don't
and
understand.
it was brilliant. But as we've discussed about online and us all chatting about Bond all the time, there's sometimes when you feel like you're not the only fan, but you're buzzing for something and your friends and family around you are like, yeah, it's a Bond film. We'll go see it. Yeah, I know this is gonna be great.
Yeah.
I feel like it needed Skyfall to be able to bring it back to you mentioned ticking the boxes because that's what I always say about Spectre. If you ask a Bond fan or just any member of your family, what are the tropes of a Bond film, and they will write a list, and you can tick them off in Spectre, but in a good way. I think that's definitely a positive of it. But I feel like it needed Skyfall to get the public and get everyone get that buzz back. In terms of the build up, I remember the announcement with the bullet and the octopus, which I hope someone got paid a lot of money for that because that was brilliant.
Yeah.
I remember some of the promo shots, but mainly it was upon the actual release. I remember we went to see it in an Everyman cinema, and we walked in, and they had the classic soundtracks playing in the background. They had themed cocktails at the bar,
Oh,
and you think this is what it's about. I mean, obviously we missed out on that with No Time to Die with where the world was, but I feel like Amazon will make a massive deal next time round. And that's what we want. We want themed cocktails. We want things like that. And it comes up on my Facebook memories every year. My review on my Facebook profile was purely better than Skyfall. That's all I put, and it comes up every year. And now, 10 years later, I do think Skyfall is the better film. But that just shows you walk out of something like Spectre and it's got everything. It ticks every box. It makes you feel great, even at the end. I know we'll probably go through it chronologically, but at the end, drives off in the car. What more do you want? You come out of that thinking, yeah, that's our franchise. That's what we want.
it does you bring you back to where you were then, because Bond fans over the years have sort of a bit like Dine of the Day, as a partial defender of it. It's easy to pick on certain things and then forget the rest of it, which a lot of that film is good. Spectre is the same. It's very easy to just dismiss the whole Brofeld thing, forget everything else that's gone before and all the other things. And sometimes you just need to think, oh, whatever. I say the same thing for Jaws of Revenge, by the way. Forget that it's revenge. Just enjoy Michael Caine on an island in the Caribbean, having fun. Some horrific shark attacks on the way. It's everything you want, isn't it? Yeah, that's
But one thing
that's
I must say that this isn't going to defend Spectre at all, but one thing I do remember is being in the cinema. I think it was just after the train scene. I was there with my wife and my sister-in-law, and I looked around. Yeah, this is brilliant. And my sister-in-law famously was asleep watching it halfway through. I think she woke up just after the train. Never let her forgive that. I blame the cocktails before we went in to
good.
see the film. But yeah, it's a strange feeling where you're so buzzing and you look around to your family and yeah,
Devastating.
asleep.
Blatant.
Yeah.
Much like Chris Goldie, John.
Yeah. I'm sure Chris Corbould and your sister would get on like a house on fire, and it wouldn't be on a Spectre celebration.
Yeah. He declined the invitation. No.
Really, 007? Really 007 podcast. Thanks for asking me to talk about Spectre, and especially in its 10-year anniversary. Where did the last 10 years go? I'm surrounded by my Spectre collection. Maybe that's a testimony to how I feel about the movie. Maybe it isn't. By the way, I'm wearing the Spectre train outfit that Daniel Craig Bond wears when he's talking to Madeline about stripping a gun and how to use it, and she schools him. But that's one of many aspects of the movie. First of all, what's my general attitude? I like Spectre. I don't know if I love Spectre. It was a very warm embrace of a movie when I first saw it. It was the first time I went to the premiere, and I bought this watch on the way to premiere. So I was buzzing with sartorial positiveness. And you can't argue that from a sartorial standpoint, It is a great movie, and I'm a Bond experience style guy, so I've got to talk about that first. It's probably one of the best movies when it comes to Bond styles, whether it be the suits or the casual outfits, or yes, even the ski outfits, or maybe if you're visiting Mr. White. The pieces are great, and that's because it's been curated expertly by Jani Tamine, who not only is an expert with costume design, she knows James Bond. But from a movie standpoint overall, the warmth dissipated very quickly over the years as I was revisiting Spectre, because I felt it was a very strong movie to a point. And that point, of course, is the Brofeld moment. Any aspect that had to do with Brofeld and my perception of a waste of an actor, Christoph Waltz, who is an amazing, amazing actor, just lights up the screen, steals the show whenever he's on screen, was wasted here. Wasted, just like the Skyfall quote. But in the movie itself, I have to talk about Daniel Craig's portrayal. I actually liked the way Daniel Craig acted in this. He had an economy of words. It was a little bit more like Quantum of Solace Daniel Craig acting rather than the Skyfall Daniel Craig acting. It's a little bit more attuned to that. I've always talked about Daniel Craig's acting having a certain fluctuation to it. It's not the most consistent James Bond throughout all of his movies. But I've got to go to the ancillary characters. So besides Blofeld, we've got to talk about sort of the side characters. Ralph Fiennes as M is great. I really appreciated his character. The affectionately called Scooby Gang, they're fine, perhaps slightly overused here. Where I think Spectre falls down is the many tropes that I always appreciate about James Bond. First of all, the music. It felt a little rehashed from Skyfall. Not appreciated. Did I like the Skyfall music? Yeah, I liked it. I didn't love it. I thought that the David Arnold music is so far superior and would have been really well suited here. And I didn't really like some of the tropes, for example, of James Bond's car chase, which seemed very underwhelming. I mean, my gosh, it's in Rome. It's got two really sexy cars, a bad guy henchman. I actually liked Hinks. But it just seems underwhelming. By the way, where are all the people? I don't know. Then I've got to go to the tropes of how do I feel like Bond is being served up as Bond? And this has a lot to do with storyline and plot. And I have to tell you that from a Spectre standpoint, although this ominous organization feels heavy, feels important, I just sort of lose that importance at the end of it. And so it leaves me just feeling a little flat. And then I've got to talk about the look. The look of Spectre. This had this crazy sepia yellowish to it, which I just don't think it serves my purposes as a viewer, and it didn't serve the movie. It came up really lackluster. So there you go. My feeling of Spectre is very meh. Not feh, meh, but you know what? I've learned to live with it. I've learned to like it, and I'm going to wait for it to get a little bit better over time. But it does need a little bit more exploration in its 10th year. I just don't think that I'm in love with this movie. There you go. There's my opinion on it. Thanks.
Hello, Reedy 007. Sean here reporting from an undisclosed location. Okay, so Spectre, 10 years on. What can I say? This was the first Bond film I ever saw in the cinema. I remember Skyfall coming out, but I didn't go see it for some reason, even though all the hype surrounding it was really exciting. So Spectre was my chance to see a Bond film on the big screen. My uncle invited me on Halloween night to go see it, and I went along in the end eventually. I was just blown away from everything I saw. The film actually opened with a gun barrel. We hadn't had that since Die Another Day. I remember being excited by the car chase in Rome and the final battle at MI6. All this was just really exciting for a 15-year-old fan who hadn't seen a Bond film in the cinema before. I remember coming out of the cinema and saying, best Bond film ever! I remember at the time when I got back to school, me and my friends were talking about the film and we were quite positive on the film at the time. My media teacher, however, did not like it. I always remember that. I saw the film again a few weeks later at the local arts centre, one of my many, many visits there. Well, the start of many, many visits there. And again, that was with my dad and my brother, and yeah, I enjoyed it then as well. Over the years, my opinions haven't really changed. I think the film is just solid, to be honest. It currently ranks at number 14 on my Bond ranking. And yeah, it's just Bond by the numbers. Solid Bond by the numbers. And I've never had a problem with that. So, yeah, that's it, to be honest. Personally, I think there are parts of it that are better done in this film than in the Star Trek Into Darkness film, if you know what I mean. In terms of the casting, I think Daniel Craig is very comfortable in this performance as Bond. I really like his humour. Certainly, I've always admitted that Daniel Craig's best attribute as Bond is his humour, with lines like, cut out the middle, man, throw it away, and, doesn't time fly, and ouch. And yeah, he's just really funny in this film. Him and Q, I quite like their little bromance, you could call it that. I mean, Q has some cracking lines in this film. M wants my balls for Christmas decorations, and all that good stuff. It just makes me chuckle. Personally, I really enjoy Christoph Waltz as Blofeld. I personally really enjoy his performance. He's just good in it, that's all I can really say. Anyway, that's just my words there on Spectre 10 years on. Take care, everyone.
We've mentioned the impact of Daniel Craig. At this point, this was pre-slitting the wrists comment. That was after the film wrapped, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So don't worry, we don't need to dwell on that. At this time, he was up for it, wasn't he? And Sam Mendes, it was his sort of idea to get Sam Mendes on board for Skyfall, because obviously they worked together in Road to Perdition and were friends. And having the same director, I think it's a really interesting thing, and it's not often discussed, the fact some people say, oh, he shouldn't have stayed on. But I think it's quite nice to have films which are grouped together, a bit like the Lewis Gilbert 1-2, with Spy Love Me and then Moonraker. They do feel linked. And because of the plot points of No Time to Die, I think it's almost a duo, the first two Craigs, and then the last three are a trilogy. But they all come together, of course. But yeah, are we all happy that Sam Mendes returned? In fact, that could be the first question.
No, I think so.
Yeah, I was. I liken the fact that it was harking back to the older days of continuity in directors. They should be given a run. Where you sign up actors for maybe 2 or 3 films, sign up a director for 2 or 3 films, give them the whole run.
I know Martin Campbell came back obviously for Casino Royale, but the last time we'd had a consecutive director was John Glenn, wasn't it? So it is quite a big thing. It's a long wait for that. And of course, you come in and you know the staff, you know how the thing works. And particularly for him on Skyfall, he's never done a big action film like that. So he left a lot of that to people like Vic Armstrong, Chris Corbould. So
yeah, I remember Michael Apted saying when he came in for Tomorrow Never Dies, he said that when he came in, everyone else knew everyone else apart from him.
Yeah,
He's the one who knew no one, and he was supposed to be running the show because it is, that big family setup where they brought everyone back to do the same work and so on. So I think it would gel more that the director can be thinking 2-3 films ahead of, is this going to all dovetail or are they going to be separate stories going forward?
It wasn't absolutely secure that Daniel would come back after this. So we did have that ending just in case he doesn't.
Yep.
And yes, I know that all the other Bonds didn't have a sort of beginning, middle and end. But because Daniel had a beginning, you've got to go through with it, haven't you? And have some kind of ending. And I know they didn't think this was the ending that should have been the ending. So they had No Time to Die. But yeah, everything else was pretty much the same, wasn't it? The same, similar writers and all that. And blame them. But anyway, right. In terms of Sam Mendes, your namesake, Sam, you a fan of his work?
Yeah, you're right. What you said earlier, he's not really done action up until Skyfall. I think the fact that they let him do another one probably was quite a safe bet for me because Skyfall was so popular. But it does make you think, I wonder if it would have shaped up a bit differently if he offered it after Skyfall. If he was offered it before, could it have shaped up a little differently? But yeah, I think great choice. I think when it works, it works as long as, they don't go down the route with some franchises of churning things out over and over and over to the point we get fatigued. But it worked in Skyfall, so it just made sense to bring him back.
His style, John, obviously there's certain things which are very Sam Mendes in it.
Yeah.
He's gone on to do with the 1917, the tracking one shot. but
One
also
shot.
the scenes they breathe a lot more. They're quite a lot. It's not as frenetic, is it? It's not like a Martin Campbell film at all.
No, I'd say that in general, Sam Mendes is an actor's director in
Yeah,
terms of that, you look at his previous stuff, the vast majority is bringing out slow burn performances from actors, which are very good. And I do think that that style is there in both his films here as well. But there is some good action in this film.
yeah.
There's a brilliant fight. There's a brilliant pre-title sequence, and yeah, of course, you've got second unit and all the rest of it as well. But let's not discredit him for that as well. I think at the time, I'd have said, yeah, it was a no-brainer to bring Sam Mendes back because of the success of Skyfall. But I think the alarm bells started ringing when he was having to be begged to come back. So it's quite well known that he wasn't really that sure of coming back for another one, and they had to convince him. And I think it's been a bit sad because I think that with hindsight, the talk of Spectre, even from the producers,
Yeah.
uh, is quite negative. It's they don't they make excuses for the film, and it just seems like the production of it was troubled in some ways, and that it didn't. I don't even know if it was it even a happy set as such, because nobody comes back talking as glowingly about film Spectre as say they did with Skyfall.
It does seem to happen, doesn't it? Like directors who've done more than one, like what's his name? So well, Martin Campbell. To be fair, he's got a 100% record, and even in his own eyes, hasn't he? But Guy Hamilton always says, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done Man with the Golden Gun." Obviously, I completely disagree with that. But there is that feeling that sometimes, oh, I did one too many. But when it's your second one, I think it's because he doesn't do a film every 2 years, Sam Mendes. He is measured and he chooses his films very carefully. And there is a bit of variety there now. So I think with this, it was sort of all go on then, wasn't it? He was definitely only thinking of doing one because I think when he was approached, it was like, oh, you want me for a Bond film? Really? Do you think I could do that? Once he knew he could, it's an easier decision, isn't it? In some respects, it's almost because it's not been as well regarded as Skyfall, it's almost his reputation with Bond fans has gone down, which is a bit unfair, I think.
His reluctance to take on Spectre was because of how good Skyfall was.
Yeah, yeah,
Box office, and it was more, and I could understand that. I'm being lauded as this great filmmaker for Skyfall. Do I want to chance my arm again? And then if it goes completely wrong, then it's, oh, well, that was just luck then, where you could go away and say, I've done this job, I've knocked it out the park, oh,
yeah.
brilliant, move on to a completely different thing. So I did understand when he was like being courted, I did understand his reluctance, because if Skyfall had just been an equal to say Quantum of Solace, he'd have been happy.
Yeah.
But it was so much better, and did so much better at the box office as well, that I just took his reluctance because of his success.
So I think I agree with you there, Graham, actually. It must have been very tempting, mustn't it? You've got the best bosses in the world, you're working with your friends, incredible actors, the team is all there, and you're having great fun doing it. But it's obviously a very daunting thing, and it's a massive project. And we always say with the actor, you're at the top, a bit like the director. Usually it falls on you, doesn't it? If something goes wrong. And I think people have been a bit unfair with that. And we will go into some of the scenes specifically in terms of the pre-title and everything. But let's just talk about Daniel's performance actually now, because again, I've heard so many different opinions. I've heard all extremes on this performance. Some fans think it's his most relaxed by a mile. They think he's loving the role. He's far more like Roger maybe in this film. He's enjoying it. More jokes, more quips. And then I've heard some people say, "Oh, he's completely bored. He's just phoning it in." And I can't. I don't know whether the answer's somewhere in the middle, because no, I think certainly No Time to Die is his most up and down performance. You've got very odd bits, and then you've got brilliant bits, and because the first two are so consistent in tone of his performance, Skyfall he's like having to do a bit more, and he's a bit more likable, dare I say it. I do find him even more likable in this, I have to say personally,
I think it's a real mixed bag. I
yeah,
think in some parts it is his most fun and his most Roger Moore. I'd agree with that. He's not afraid to get dressed up in his costumes. He's
yeah,
falling on the couch in the pre-title sequence. The fight scene's very good. So there is definitely even like in walking through the Hoffler Clinic. Props to Graham's t-shirt.
yes.
There's a presence there, and it's great. And he does look like he's having fun. I don't think he's bored in it. I do not. I can't see that at all. But what I can see is that I also think he's his most belligerent at times. I think the way, not Daniel Craig as an actor, I'm talking about his portrayal of Bond. The disrespect he shows M in this film is disgraceful.
You had no authority. None. As you know, we're in the middle of the biggest shake-up in the history of British intelligence. The ink's barely dry on this merger with MI5, and already they're itching for a chance to scrap the 00 program forever, and you've just given them one.
You're right, sir. You have got a tricky day ahead.
And I do find that it's a bit, I don't know, it's just a bit contrasting. Is that 1 minute is very fun, and the next minute is quite defiant. And I find that I'm not entirely sure what he's trying to get at as his performance in this film.
Is it because you knew that M was trying to kill people with Heracles? Do you think? Which was meant to be in this film. It was meant to be a plot point. Damn, I don't know how that would have fit in when you've got,
Did I read somewhere that did Ray Fiennes was it
Yeah.
Spectre or no? Did he say that originally he was supposed to be Blofeld?
Oh,
Am I
really?
making that
right,
up? I'm
okay.
sure I've heard it in an
Yeah.
interview. Or I've seen it read somewhere that it was in the early stages that was, or at least maybe not Blofeld, but the big bad it turned out at the end. It was
Yeah.
one of the two. It was definitely mentioned to him. I'll have to Google it now just to make
Yeah,
a
yeah.
bit of fact checking.
But what do you think of Daniel's performance, Sam?
I think it's his best performance as James Bond. I think in a
Brilliant.
few of the others, you mentioned No Time to Die, it's a bit up and down. The earlier ones, he was still finding his feet. The Skyfall, he was a little bit moody in it. I think when you watch him in Spectre, I know afterwards he made all them comments, broke his leg and all this, but he looks like he's having a whale of a time in this film.
There is a
And
difference between the actor, his comments saying, "Oh, I wasn't enjoy," and what you're absolutely right. I don't really care if you didn't enjoy making it, as long as your performance is good and you look like you're enjoying it. Then we don't really care,
Yeah.
do we?
No. I think, John, your comments about the Roger Moore side of it is absolutely bang on. I think there's the moments when he's side by side with Higgs when he's in the plane and he does the little nod to the side, clearly a Roger Moore nod, but he looks like he's having great fun. He's not been forced to say, do you know what would be good here? Maybe you do, hark back to Roger with a nod. He genuinely looks like he's enjoying himself in this film.
And you've got to get the right humour for your actor as well, haven't you? It's not a case of Roger was the funny one, so we'll just do what Roger did. Like the bit where he lands on the sofa in the pre-title sequence works for him. Like it might not have worked for all the other Bonds, but if you can find that, if you can hone in on that humour as part of the character, it works well. And to be
But
fair,
he
there's
doesn't
quite a bit
overdo
of
it,
that
does he?
No Time to Die as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he doesn't overdo it on the humour either. I think it's the right balance. And
Yeah.
yeah, I would say it's his best performance.
Flipping heck. Where does it rank for you, Graham, in terms of his performances?
Top.
Listen to this.
It's
This is amazing.
I can't remember who the actor was that said it, but they said that they were with Daniel Craig on set, just generally talking, and they said that as he walked towards the stage or the back lot or wherever they were, they said they actually saw him changing into Bond. That suddenly
Oh.
his shoulders went
Wow.
back, the walk was more purposeful, and they said they literally saw Daniel Craig turning into James Bond as they went saying, right, okay, we're ready for the next scene. And he is the man in this, it's right from the very start. It's my happy go-to film every time. If I just want to pluck a film out, it goes with me if I'm ever going on a holiday, it's downloaded, it's on the iPad. I've watched it everywhere, so I can't fault it at all. There's probably going to be loads of complaints there about me.
No, no,
Great
no,
rubber.
no.
Oh,
But
this is
no,
a
it's
celebration.
best
This
one.
Celebration.
We're all here defending it.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to be apologetic. It's
No.
so good to see people saying how much they love this film and how much they love the performance in it, because it's so easy and so cheap to just, like I say, you throw those, I don't know, easy targets at the film and then forget about everything else. So that's brilliant, Graham.
Daniel Craig's performance in this film is, I quite like it, to be honest with you, and I think he's just got a bit more swagger that I think was starting to come in Skyfall, and I don't think he's as nasty maybe as he is in the first two films. The whole kind of what they were aiming for does sort of bleed into his performance, which is trying to sort of go back to a sort of traditional Bond film, and he is almost trying to give a bit more of a sort of relaxed Bond performance. Just little things like after the car chase when he parachutes down and then unbuckles it, and then I can't remember if he nods to someone, or I can't remember.
Yeah.
Forgive me, I don't know this film quite as well as some of the others, but just that sort of thing where it's just a bit more of the sort of that Bond swagger that can sometimes in some of his performances occasionally come across as too much kind of arrogance or whatever, but I don't feel it too much in this film. I think he does a decent job, really.
Full disclosure, it's not one of my favourite Bond films. It's not even one of my favourite Daniel Craig films, so I do come at it in a slightly critical way. But just to say, all Bond films have the merits more than others. But yeah, this is one that I really struggle with, and hopefully I'll try and get that across. So Spectre, on paper, lot to love. Daniel Craig is easing into the role. There's an attempt at humour, a lightness of touch. There's some really interesting kind of set pieces. There's clearly a lot of money that's been thrown at this film. But for me, it's a bit lifeless and a little bit kind of a bit disappointing, really. I think, particularly after Skyfall, which I really, really enjoyed at the cinema, and it sort of came away kind of thinking, right, okay, this is now things are working really well for the Craig kind of tenure. But I was sorely disappointed with this one. And from the start, again, I feel like on paper this should be working really well. The opening scene, obviously there's lots of nods to Live and Let Die and other Bond films. It should have that magic, but for me it just falls flat. It feels lifeless, which is surprising given the amount of extras that are involved in the production. Again, a lot of it, but I don't know if that's to do with the way it's shot. I think this single shot, it's not a single shot, obviously it's edited to make it look like a single shot. I don't know, it distances me from it, and I feel like I don't know. I think sometimes with cinematic techniques, it can really distance you from the film. There's no kind of, you're very much watching this film happen rather than kind of being kind of involved in it as such. So yeah, I think that the opening, while again on paper, the set as a set piece is really fun, really exciting, really well executed. It's great to see, most of it is practical, obviously a few inserts here and there using kind of CGI, but overall having a helicopter do loop the loop and people struggling to get in and out and fight, great. Into the song, not a fan of the song, not a fan of Thomas Newman's score. I think it just feels a lot of retreading. I don't know that people, if there are such things as John Barry haters, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who feel that actually John Barry, repeated himself with certain themes or just the general sound. I don't agree with that. I think they're very distinctive, actually, if you listen to it. But I do feel that there's a lot of repetition in the score in this. The title sequence itself, again, I just don't connect with it. It just feels, I think octopus stuff, and it's all a bit maybe too much on the nose. But Bond does have a history of doing that, particularly in the title sequences. Again, just kind of maybe being a bit too picky. Questioning things like, we ended Skyfall with Bond on really good terms with Mallory M, and now they're like each other worst enemies, it feels like. You know, Bond being incredibly disrespectful, which then he sort of carries on for the next film as well. Don't like that. You know, it's not something I particularly enjoy. I like there to be tension between the two of them, but actually, you know, there is respect. I find that Craig does move his portrayal, or the relationship he has on screen is disrespectful, and I just don't know how he would ever get away with that. Anyway, just something that the last time I watched it, I thought, gosh, you know, he's incredibly rude. Moving to Italy again, should be great. Feels lifeless. I think, you know, the car chase itself is flat and a little bit pointless and just ends more of it as an explosion, but it feels like a whimper. It doesn't really kind of do much for me. It should be hitting all the right notes here. It should be fun, you know, pressing the wrong buttons, you know, stealing the car. It feels like, again, it's just like its heart's in the right place, but I feel like they don't believe it. I feel like there's nothing really kind of genuine behind it. I think it feels like just an exercise in let's just get this film made and out. Dave, what's he called? Batista's character, Jinx, is it Jing? I can't remember. I'm losing track of all these characters. Anyway, he is great. Underused, disappointing death. Again, like wasted opportunity. And I feel like with Spectre, the whole issue that I have with it is often that they've not stopped to think things through. Now, obviously, there are set pieces which work really well. Big ticks, you know, for a Bond fan, you think this is, you know, a downhill chase, skiing, you know, well, not necessarily skiing, but, you know, that has that snow elements to it. I do like that set piece. I think that the clinic, you know, the production design, the setting, everything works really well. And again, like seeing Craig being much more relaxed in the role, adding a sort of lightness, a touch to the performance, you know, being, you know, a few quips here and there works really well for him, and it sort of sits nicely. But when we actually come to the real big issue that I have with it, which is obviously bringing in Spectre, which I wasn't a fan of when this was announced. I wasn't a fan of because I felt that what they were doing with Quantum was working really well in terms of building up this organisation that was obviously, you know, in place of Spectre because of rights and all that, the rest of it. But I do think that what they were doing with Quantum from Casino Royale and obviously the Quantum of Solace, you know, if they brought that back for this one, would have worked really well. And there's no reason why Blofeld couldn't have been the head of Quantum and then showing something. But this whole idea that he's intrinsically linked with Bond from childhood is honestly, whenever I think about it, it feels so stupid that I have to sort of pause to think, what on earth were they thinking? Because it just seems to me like I can't even put into words just how stupid it sounds. Like I say, for me, it seems like such an idiotic idea which doesn't work. And this idea of retconning and trying to tie in the other previous films that Blofeld was behind it, and it is painful. And whenever I start this film, I always start it with really good intentions of I'm going to like this. You know, a lot of a few of the people in really 007, you know, really like it, like it quite a bit. Of the Daniel Craig films, and I know that he has built quite a strong fan base because of this. Like, oh well, of all the Daniel Craig ones, this is the most fun. It's the most like a traditional Bond film. But I find that the writing is unforgivably bad. I think that you know, like say, bringing in Blofeld and just basically just ruining it. You know, having it. You know, they could have done. There's so many options you could have done with that character. Introduced far too early in, reveals far too early, dealt with far too easily. You know, the idea that he's escaping, you know, in a helicopter and Bond chases in a boat is, again, it's just like, did you not stop for a second and think, well, actually, that helicopter could just veer away from the river and therefore would have made a escape? No, he then kind of, I can't remember how he gets shot, sprains his ankle or something at the end.
Finish it. Out of bullets.
Ending him driving off in the Aston Martin, great. So for every silly bit of writing, there is a moment where I feel like they do get it, and I really like to see all the different drafts from the different writers, and where Mendes is, and all the other, and Wilson and Broccoli, and what the choices were, because I feel it feels a very odd film, and I know that some of the other Bond films often feel that way sometimes, when you feel that actually this is trying to be dark thriller, and then suddenly it becomes comedy. And the tonal shifts and stuff could give you whiplash, but I think with this one, it's like I say, I keep coming back to it. It feels strangely lifeless, and I think for a Bond film, that is it the ultimate sin? Maybe an unexciting Bond film is not. You're not doing great there, but again, scenes on themselves, the acting. The production, the fact that it's quite clear there's a lot of money being spent on this, and a lot of care. I just wish they spent more time caring about the script and the story, because if we didn't have that if it was just a stand-up, we didn't have Blofeld tying into his foster parents and deaths and childhood, and then him being linked to all these other previous characters, I would probably enjoy it far more. But I feel that sometimes the writing is so bad, for me, it's unforgivable, maybe, but it's not high on my list. And I think that having recently watched Skyfall, which is the one that I kind of come in and out of, that hits the mark more and feels like a much more kind of solid, has a better understanding, and actually is exciting, and is trying to do a few things a little bit differently, which I'm all for, within the confines of the structure and the character and the world that's been created. But I come back to it. I do enjoy, there's an awful lot to enjoy, and I'm really glad that people do have reassessed it and kind of looked at it and thought, actually, there is a lot here that in this film that I really like about classic Bond films, and I'm glad that it's finding, in the same way that Quantum of Solace is clearly finding its audiences as being reassessed, and I'm all for that. But for me, every time I watch, it's a very long film as well, and it feels long. I think the pacing is off, but there's a lot to like in there. But as a Bond film, it doesn't do what I want it to do all the time. But I do find myself watching it again, so there's something in there. Who knows? It might click with me if I turn it off 20 minutes from the end. But anyway, it's a celebration.
Keep watching for part 2 of our Spectre 10th anniversary celebration.